What is the most Karen thing a Karen has even done to you, personally? Working retail one afternoon, and here comes Karen with a return. At first glance it's no big deal, just coming in to return a shirt. She walks up to the register, hands me the receipt to start processing, and we exchange a pleasant greeting. I take the shirt out of the bag to examine it, and it is beyond disgusting. There were brown sweat stains all over it, from the pits to the stomach to the shoulder. It looked like whoever wore it rolled in mud or some nonsense. I proceed to tell Karen that I cannot return the product because it had clearly been used, and that only unused and reusable items could be returned. Karen threw a fit, started screaming at me and accusing me of calling her a liar and whatnot. I hold up the shirt and point to the brown pit stains and say back, quote, "Karen, can't you see this stain? Oh man, did that make it worse?" She continues making a huge scene and demands to see the manager. Newsflash, Karen, I'm the manager, and I'm not budging. After 20 or so minutes of complaining, she finally leaves saying she'll be complaining to corporate and getting me fired and blah blah blah. Fast forward a few days. A guy walks into the store, finds the first store associate he can, and immediately asks for me by name. Oh, here we go again. Anyway, my associate bring the guy over to where I'm standing, and I politely greet him. The guy spends the next 10 minutes apologizing for his crazy wife Karen verbally abusing my staff and I a few days prior. Apparently, the guy went to the beach and did some type of CrossFit/HIIT training class in the sand. Karen knows all of this. She was at the class with him. The guy ended up not liking the shirt for some reason, and Karen thought she could pull a fast one on us by making a scene. Think again, Karen. I met plenty of Karens while working retail, but there's one who stands out. Karen was Indian and had the most entitled attitude of anyone I've ever met. She was also a regular customer, so we had to deal with her sheet at least twice a week. Karen's favorite pastime would be to literally fill a trolley with clearance items. These are a nightmare as you have to reduce the price on the till manually. Management were worried about scanning fraud and so had disabled the multiplication button on the till. This meant that each item has to be scanned and discounted individually. Once all of her items had been scanned and discounted, Karen would always kick up a fuss over the price, accusing us of overcharging her and demanding to see a manager. Some managers would give in to Karen, which meant voiding the transaction and starting over. If they told Karen to get lost, she'd complain about never shopping here again and storm out, leaving a full trolley of goods to put back. Thanks, Beach. Either way, the entire sheet show would take at least an hour. There was a nice moment of calm for Karen, however. One winter, we had an especially heavy snowstorm. Our policy in this case is to clear the car park access to the spaces closest to the door. We do this as very few people come out when it's snowing, and it lets people park as close as possible. Not Karen though. Oh no. She pulls into the car park, drives into the uncleared section and tries to drive through a snowdrift, hitting a covered bollard in the process. She then clomps into the store, demands to see the manager, and proceeds to yell at him point blank. Apparently she was going to sue us and get every employee fired for not clearing her usual parking space of snow. Our manager responded by banning her from our store for being abusive towards staff. Edit. Autocorrect. Doctor here. I used to work in a public night shift service, kinda like an emergency room but for non-emergencies, to keep the hospitals clear of white codes. So anything from a fever to a sore throat, to prescriptions for urgent treatments, and a Karen walks in at 3 AM asking for a prescription for hypertension drugs, which isn't unusual, as old people, more often than not, but she looked 55, sometimes don't notice they are running low. Anyway, the law, not a rule, not my decision, the law, states that this service can only write prescriptions for potentially life-threatening conditions, drugs for a maximum of 72 hours coverage. So if you take one pill a day, I can only prescribe you a single blister. Here we don't have bottles, but blisters. And while I'm writing the prescription, Karen casually mentioned that she was insomniac, and while cleaning the medicine cabinet she realized she was down to her last full blister. My pen stops. I ask her to repeat. Full blister? Yeah. So I take the prescription, tear it in half, then again, then I throw it in the bin, explaining her the law. She gets mad, starts yelling and threatened to call the cops. Go ahead. Cops came, and she triumphantly announced that I'm refusing to treat her. I explained the situation, and they ask her if it's true that she has a full blister, and she, of course, being a Karen who is always right no matter what, confirms it. The cops look at her, still with a look of triumph, waiting for them to arrest me, then at me, then ask her politely to leave, as I'm in the right. She's livid point the day after my boss called me and cracked up cause she went there during the day to talk to the manager, and she, my boss, told her the exact same thing. Never saw her again in there, weirdly enough. When I worked at a grocery store, I had a woman throw a conniption over a coupon point, so here's a skinny. The coupon was for half off a bakery cake. Our bakery cake. As in you can walk in the bakery, grab a cake we have made, and buy it. This is what the coupon was for. Well, Karen 5000 went to the frozen food section, got a frozen Sara Lee cake, and wanted to use the coupon on that. Now, I explained how the coupon worked to her. And keep in mind, this was not a tricky coupon. There was no fine print. It wasn't one of those gotcha moments. It was a very clear coupon, in that it was abundantly obvious it could only be used in our bakery point. Well, she threw a fit. She hooted and hollered. She demanded I give her the coupon anyway, but there was literally no way for me to do that without manager override because I was a peon. So then she insisted that I get my manager. Works for me point. My manager comes up, and, to my delight, it's Adam. Now, Adam is useless. He can't figure out how to do sheet. I'm not entirely sure how this guy still has a job. So, she's screaming at him to give her the discount. But he can't figure it out. It's probably the simplest manager override function he'd need to perform, and he can't do it. So he suggests she buy a bakery cake for the coupon price. She sneers and says, I need a cake that says happy birthday. None of those cakes say happy birthday. What am I supposed to do about that? So, I said, buy some icing and write happy birthday yourself. That did it. She left shouting at us that we'd lost a customer. Doubtful, since she had an account at our store and had been shopping there since the Stone Age point. I hope that, in her darkest moments, when life seems cold and dreary and the world is against her, she thinks of me. She sees my face. And she suffers. Name changed for safety of idiot manager. I have dealt with some fairly entitled people as a claims adjuster. I posted this a while back point. I once had the misfortune of taking some high-end insured's claim. When our richer insureds hit someone or get hit, they typically get a personal adjuster who does everything. However, they send it off to me. Something about vacations in any case. The best part about these claims is how easy they are. You basically say yes, as long as it is not completely bonkers, and write checks later. So our insured hit this lady's Ferrari. The claimant, Mrs. Ferrari lady, wants to take it to the Ferrari dealership. I said fine. She demanded a rental. I told her that was not a problem. Take the Ferrari over there. We'll get you another Ferrari, not a faking piece of sheetness and central like last time. Point. I call the dealership and explain to them how to proceed. Make sure to get her into a rental. Make it nice and easy. Send me the bill. We'll get it handled. At this point I'm basically telling the dealership to proceed forward as they see fit, to shoot first and ask questions later. The last thing I want are problems with one of these claims, and we have the power and authority to do so. Our insureds paid out the ass for the extra service, even for their claimants. The guy on the phone tells me he'll make sure everything is good. I just gave this guy a golden ticket. He can hand her a $250 a day car rental, and we'll be writing the check, no questions asked. Start repairs as soon as possible. Order the parts today. Don't bug me. Send the bill. He gets it. Life is supposed to be simple. I literally want him to email you the estimate. I send him the check and email him a screenshot. That's it. This claim should be faking easy. Point. I get a call 2 hours later. The woman is pissed. Maybe she got a dumb tech who didn't hear the news. Nope. Even I couldn't get that lucky. Point. She's out of her mind. So I talk to a rep that is capable of conversing without screaming like a banshee at everything. He explains she has refused to take a rental. I ask why. She wants the same year and color and model. He tells me he just spent 30 minutes calling any dealer in the city, knowing full well I will pay the markup for having the dealership rent a car from a competitor. There are no rental Ferraris in the area that match that request, and none in the nearest 3 cities apparently. I ask our manager. My manager refuses to ship in another Ferrari. Damn it. She goes bonkers and nothing is accomplished. I can't even get a word in. They take the phone conversation into the dealership service manager's office. He asks her why she will not take the rental. After all, this should be easy. And she said this: I need an exact year, make, and model of rental car, because I'm going to the country club this Saturday and cannot let everybody know I was in an accident. I could not even process that sheet. I was in such a state of shock I said nothing. The level of entitlement was so great I could not even process it. This woman was one of the ultra-rich. Even a Sentra would be perfectly serviceable for me. This woman was devastated by not having her life in perfect order. The delay was long enough that they thought I hung up the phone. It's been long enough that I think anyone involved has long since forgotten. Now, I should say that this didn't happen to me personally, but it occurred in real time while I was indirectly present. I was working for a phone company in a call center. We were in training for a new scope of service, and part of that training involved listening to some of those calls that may be recorded for training purposes. Normally, the recordings are selected semi-randomly, but this one was specifically selected because it had happened to a supervisor in our center 10 minutes prior. Karen called us in a fury. It seems that she had discovered that her son had replaced her number on his 5 favorite numbers list with the contact information of an unknown female. She wanted us to change it back. We legally could not do that. It's not her phone, after all, and he made the change intentionally. When the agent on the call tells her this, Karen flips her sheet in the way only a true Karen can. It's the full package, screaming, shouting, accusing us of being crooked, unfair. The customer is always right, etc. At this point, I should mention that Karen was calling from the store in her local mall. After about 5 minutes of Karen rage, we hear the following exchange. Serious authority voice: ma'am, if you can't calm down, you're gonna have to leave the store. Mostly incoherent raging. Sounds like I will not calm down, they're cheating me, and so forth. Sav: okay, ma'am, you're under arrest. Shocked, disbelieving, pausing, raging: I'm what? Sav: you're under arrest, ma'am, for something muffled and unintelligible. This final declaration is followed by the sound of a mobile phone clattering to the floor/countertop, from where the salesperson retrieves it. Oh, yeah, sorry about that. I don't think you have to worry about this anymore. She just got arrested. During the 2009 recession period, I worked at Best Buy while I was between real jobs. At the time, the website and the retail stores were run by separate business entities. So it was often that store and web prices differed. But the store policy was to always match. One night a couple comes in. Karen asks for a 500 MB Seagate hard drive. I asked, did you mean gigabyte? Karen: I know what I want. Just show me where it's at. Me: no problem. Hard drives are over here. Karen: what the hell? This drive was $50 cheaper online. Are you trying to rip me off? Me: just a minute, let me look it up. I find a Western Digital that is on sale. Me: looks like it is this drive that is on sale for $109. I don't remember the numbers now. Karen: can't you read? The tag says $159. Me: yes, I can give you this drive for the $109. It matches the one online. Karen: fine, call your manager, or whatever you have to do. We didn't need a manager for matches. While doing the register stuff, Karen says to her husband, this is probably going to take a while. They never know what they are doing, so we get a payment and Karen gives me a Visa. Now, out of habit, I ask for an ID. Karen: are you kidding me? You are not authorized to require an ID for a purchase. That is Visa's policy. I'm going to have this store shut down for such a ridiculous requirement. Blah blah blah. While she prattled on, I finalized the transaction, put the drive in a bag, and handed it to her without looking at her. I did look at the husband, who had been silent the entire time. He slowly glanced down at the ground and followed her out. On the way out, she, of course, asked to talk to a manager. So 2 things about the situation. She is correct. Visa, at least at the time, did not require ID checks. However, merchants were permitted to ask. I did give a thought to making a scene out of it, because it was my last night. The managers on duty got a good laugh out of her. So glad I finally get to post something. Buckle up, it's story time. For my grade 2 end of the year school party, we went over to a community pool. It was designed for kids, with a lazy river, slide, etc. There were a few kids that had gotten hold of inner tubes, like the style you find at water parks all the time. I wanted one too, and found one sitting on the edge of the pool. I grabbed it and started to play with it, as kids do. Some lady comes over and tells me that she had rented it and that I couldn't play with it. Ogre lady takes the tube and leaves it on the edge of the pool, not even using it, smirks back at me with this crappy face, like she beat me in some major contest of wills. Me being raised to respect people that were, at least technically, adults, I say fine, whatever. Weird flex to prove your adulthood by bullying a 7-year-old, but W/E moved on with my play. Some swim instructor that had another tube noticed and let me play with one that her class was done using. I say thank you. Happy me has a tube now. Another kid in my class immediately bobs over and asks if he can use my newfound tube. I tell him no, I just got it. He shrugs and goes over and takes Ogre lady's tube, which she is not using and has left on the edge of the pool. I keep playing for probably another 2 minutes when Ogre lady comes splashing back. The conversation goes like this. "Oh, I told you to stop playing with that tube. Give it back." Me. "This isn't your tube. That swim instructor gave it to me, and another kid in my class took yours down the lazy hole." Interrupting and now shouting, "I don't believe you. Give it here." Proceeds to yank the tube off my head. Me. "Hey." Ol. Puts tube back on the edge of the pool right where the last one was, and comes over to me. "You're a little thief and your mother ought to be ashamed of raising a liar. If I see you going near that tube again, I'll have you kicked out of the pool." Goes back to gossiping with the other stereotypical suburban moms. I obviously am terrified and feel awful cause I got yelled at and insulted by a stranger. I don't remember the rest of the day, other than it was pretty miserable after that. The injustice of the whole thing, especially that the other kid who took the tube got off with the whole thing. He often wasn't very nice to me, still makes me grit my teeth. I'm now a full grown adult. TLDR Karen called 7-year-old me a thief and a liar at a public pool because I was the closest punching bag when she lost track of a pool tube. In tech support, this Karen had started a PowerPoint presentation, saved it, gave it a name, worked on it for 8 hours, closed it, and when the program said, "Do you want to save changes?" said no. So the program did what it was told and dumped them, and surprisingly when she reopened it, it was blank. I explained that she told it not to. Interrupt. "No, that is not acceptable. You will fix it." "No, there is no." Interrupt. Go around this circle several times. I finally call the on-call support for her company and explain what was going on. Have you ever had someone roll their eyes so hard you could hear them over a phone? Then conferenced Karen, who started right in before either of us could say anything with how incompetent I was. etc. He let her burble for a minute then cut her off. She started squawking and he cut her off again and again and again until she finally shut up out of sheer surprise, I think. Screeching like a harpy didn't work. "What world is this?" He explained to her the same thing that I had, and she started yowling again, and he chopped her off. "No. You've wasted my time on my day off, working as a favor to people with actual problems, and you've wasted tech support's time. You were abusive to both of us, and I'm going to report you 2 hours in the morning. Goodbye." Click. He hangs up, and I'm laughing my ass off as she spits and sputters like an engine that just got a good solid swig of water. Note, in this particular version of PowerPoint from decades ago, early 1990s, while it did have autosave, the autosaves were both unreliable and automatically deleted when you close the program. Microsoft wouldn't support anything over 25 slides, and hers was over 250. Edit. Heh, thanks for the silver. I'm glad my pain can bring some amusement to others. Not really Karen, more like entitled parent, but I see no difference. So, if you're from Illinois, you know that softball/baseball is huge there. Like everybody plays it. Even if you're not athletic, you've tried at least t-ball at some point in your life. My little sister's HU softball team made the championships in our in-house league. Essentially a league of like 5 to 9 teams that all played each other for a title at the end. My dad was the coach, and my sister's team, first place overall, and was playing the second place team in the championships. It was like the last week of June, so it was hot as hell outside. The other team they were playing had summer holes for parents. Like record-breaking as holishness. Every time a call didn't go in their favor, correct or not, but in this case maybe like 3 ice calls the entire game were bad. Which is not bad at all considering it was a 15-year kid umping the game. Every single time one of their players gets called out, boo. One pitch is called a strike. Boo. My dad, at the time, was the president of the league and often spotted runs and such to the other team because in his own words, they wouldn't shut the hell up. They were down by 10, so spotting them a run here and there wouldn't hurt. Long story short, at the end of the game he was booed off the field by the parents at a .HU softball game. 8-year-olds who are in like 2nd grade. Jesus people. Then after the game, the two teams were celebrating at Dairy Queen. Obviously not together. Then one of the moms from the other team comes up to me and my dad and says, "You and your other asshole coaches cheated and it was not a fair game. If I ever find out that you're working with children again, I'll call CPS and let them know what you're up to. People like you are what's wrong with America." Note, my father is black, so that last line was relatively offensive. Used to work at Walgreens in the photo department, and I was a huge stickler for not selling professionally done photos if they didn't have a release from the photographer. This one lady brought in a boudoir set that I'm certain nobody wanted to see, but they were clearly professional. I wouldn't sell them to her. Told her she could get a release from the photographer and come back. Immediately indignant. Exclaimed, "I'll email him right now." She did. Few minutes later, she makes a phone call, walks 1 aisle away from me to take it. Now is yelling at the guy saying he screwed her over, and why did you give me a CD with the pictures if I couldn't print them? And then my favorite line, "No, you're cheap. I was losing it in the photo department." Goes on for a couple more minutes, then she storms over to me again and just goes, "Jim, my pictures, ma'am, you clearly don't own the rights to these. I'm not going to sell them to you. Go get your manager." I walk to the office and talk my manager, tell her everything. We laugh, but ultimately my manager was a pushover most of the time. Not this time. She walks out with me, and now we are both telling this lady off. She starts to accuse me of being a pervert who just wants to keep them for myself. Yeah, nah. But ultimately, the manager, just to get her out of the store, says that instead of them going in the bin with all of the other no sales, to be counted in the morning and shredded, she'd shred them right then. Of course this is this lady's only win for the day, so she takes the deal. She stayed there while my manager shredded them. These faking stories happened every goddamn day. I work at a casino now, and I saw far more scum of the earth trying to fuck over professionals there at the job at Walgreens than I ever see at the casino. And fuck any of you who ask why did I care. Those people don't do photography for fun. It's their faking job. If you want prints done, either pay them for them, or pay for the rights to the digitals. And you photographers, if someone does have your permission to do as many reprints as they like, faking give them some kind of written or digital permission. That way the person who prints those photos can say they saw the slip and are absolved of any responsibility brought about by reprinting. According to Walgreens policy, if the photographer found out the photos were reprinted, my store and I could each be responsible for damages to their income for having printed them. I work as a server at weddings and catered events, so it should go without saying that I've had to deal with a lot of entitled people. But there's one woman in particular who stands out in my mind. The first warning sign was when the father of the bride was giving his speech. He ended by giving a very heartfelt thanks to the stepfather of the bride for raising his daughter, just like he would have. Most speeches put me to sleep, but this was actually very touching. He follows it up by turning towards his ex-wife, the mother of the bride, and saying, Karen, you're still a beach. Yikes. Later. In the night, we've just brought out appetizers. They're a pasta dish. Looks like pappardelle in a sage and brown butter sauce. I've had it before, it's really good, but bussing it is awful, because the butter gets everywhere. Anyway, I'm standing near my section waiting for the signal to start picking appetizers up, when Karen walks straight up to me complaining about the appetizer. She's saying that the appetizer isn't what they ordered. As far as I'm aware, the appetizer is exactly what was listed on the contract. In any case, it's a problem for my supervisor, not for me. I'll let Karen know that I'll find our maitre d' so someone more qualified can handle her complaint. I walk into the back and find our maitre d' literally hiding behind the refrigerators. She's been dealing with Karen all day, and for her this is just one in a long line of lectures she's gotten from Karen. After a 2-minute coaching session from our supervisors, our maitre d' is ready to handle Karen. In theory. 10 minutes later, and Karen is still chewing her out. Is it because the appetizer tasted bad? Was it undercooked? Did they request it differently? Oh no. She just wanted a different type of pasta. She wanted rigatoni instead of pappardelle. That's when I figured out it would be one of those nights. But I'll just talk about the parts that involve Karen. Throughout the night, Karen would complain to at least half the servers that the AC wasn't on. In truth, the AC was on all the way, but it takes a long time to cool down a big room in June. Each of the servers explained this to her, but nothing could stop Karen. At one point she accused a server of just not caring. Beach, we are wearing 3 layers of all black with long sleeves and pants. We care quite a lot about the temperature. Later on, everyone's had their entrees and the DJs called them back onto the dance floor. I'm standing near my section again. It's mostly cleared, and I'm thinking about seeing if there's a leftover steak in the back with my name on it. Until of course I see a certain someone strolling up to me. There is a broken glass on the dance floor. It's been there for 5 minutes and nobody has cleaned it up yet. Okay, well, people really aren't supposed to bring glasses onto the dance floor in the first place, but of course we do have someone on staff to clean these sorts of messes up. They happen. I go into the back and let our guy know about the glass. He does his thing, walks out, sweeps it up. Problem solved. 10 minutes later, Karen comes up to me again. I have to think she was targeting me so frequently because my section was closest to the entrance to the kitchen. I thought you said you would get someone to clean the dance floor. It is soaking wet and someone could slip and hurt themselves. Why isn't there anyone here in charge of mopping that dance floor? Okay, well, here we go again. I go into the back and find our guy. There's another spill on the dance floor. Karen wants it mopped up. Well, we can soak it up with paper towels, but we can't mop. We'd have to clear the guests off the dance floor, and bringing the mop out would be a really bad look anyway. Paper towels it is. Our guy, maitre d', and another server are out there every 15 minutes for the rest of the night cleaning up spills for guests who don't give a fuck. As for the rest of us, we hid in the back as soon as we were done with cake and coffee service. There was a lot else going on that night in addition to Karen, and nobody wanted to deal with any of it. Resistance was futile. However, about an hour before the end of the night, Karen stormed into the back, drunker than hell, screaming about every little thing. Her guests were overheating. There was broken glass, puddles on the dance floor. The food was awful. Why isn't there anyone here in charge of my wedding? Our supervisor met her before she made it all the way in, and with the patience of a saint reiterated everything we had told her up to this point. But every time he tried to speak, she would interrupt with, "I don't care." Her husband had to drag her out of the back. As one last touch, she accused us of stealing her purse while we were cleaning up. Turns out it was just on the other side of the room. This happens all the time, but it was the cherry on top for an already awful evening. TLDR. The food was awful, the room was too hot, the dance floor was wet, and we stole her purse. According to Karen. Edit. A couple spelling and grammar fixes. I'm not sure if this counts, but in high school I worked at a restaurant on the Jersey Shore. My manager, who basically lived at the restaurant, had a pet fish that she kept on the hostess desk. Trust me when I say this fish lived a very good life. She was obsessed and everyone knew not to fuck with XXX fish. One day during a Sunday brunch buffet, a random woman there eating out of nowhere decides she's going to save the fish. So she grabs a spare kid's plastic cup that we left by the drink area, runs up to the desk and scoops the fish into the cup, and then instead of running out of the restaurant she runs in the bathroom that happened to be located right across from the hostess desk. I was in pure shock, Pikachu meme style, but my good friend who was working with me leapt over the desk like we were in a movie, still laugh over this story with friends, and runs in the bathroom after her. We did not know if she was trying to flush the fish, which was everyone's first assumption. The woman tried fighting my fellow hostess friend for the fish, both physically and verbally, for a few minutes. Eventually my manager got involved and also had to verbally fight with this woman, who was saying that she couldn't believe the conditions this fish was living in. Why would we have a fish in a restaurant? etc. Let me repeat, this fish was all my manager had at this point, besides work. So the fish actually got its bowl cleaned very regularly and lived alone. My manager researched things all the time about it, and I know it was more than fine, so I still am confused why she was so concerned. Eventually the woman went back to eating at the buffet. Yes, apparently her plan was to keep the fish on her table, finish her meal, and then go save him. Whatever the fuck that meant. Continued making comments every time she passed, commented to other patrons about the poor fish, and glared at us for the remainder of her meal. Most ironic part is that she did not gracefully scoop the fish into the cup, so the fish ended up getting hurt. My manager was very distraught after this all happened, and the fish was hurt as mentioned. The woman had an entire table full of people with her, and had not been a problem before, so she let her stay. I think her focus went to the fish and she just wanted this lady out of her face. I personally would have kicked her to the curb and said so that day. Never saw the woman or her family again, and did not hear anything about the poor fish conditions from anyone. She swore Peter was on the way. LMAO. A little late, but here it goes. I was working a back drive at a fast food joint years ago, and older Karen comes driving in to give her order. Now, this location doesn't have a speaker due to a neighborhood ordinance, so all the orders in drive-thru are taken face to face. She orders a double cheeseburger without onions, and I ring it in, complete her order, and send her on her way. About 5 minutes after she's picked up her food, she comes back through drive-thru and says they put onions on my burger. I apologize, print her up a duplicate receipt to confirm to her and myself that I rang it in without onions. I then tell her that if she goes up to the front window and tells the manager who's working up front that they'll replace the burger for free made correctly, but that I can't do anything about it back here. She does so, and they give her a brand new burger and an apology. I thought that was the end of the situation, but boy was I wrong. Karen called the state government on me by name, demanding I be fired. If I recall correctly, I was told that she called the Food Safety Department, the Chamber of Commerce and the governor's office. The franchise owner called to say that it turned out that Karen is allergic to onions, and she straight up accused me of deliberately ringing her sandwich in wrong and trying to poison her, then printing up a false duplicate receipt of her order to make her look like a liar. Keep in mind that I read the receipt back to her and she confirmed it was her order. I didn't get along with the manager, who was working at the time, but even he was like, that's complete bullshit. It wasn't even his mistake, it was the kitchen's, and we fixed it for her. The franchise owner was told by whichever branch of the state government called them that Karen had demanded that I be fired. I wasn't even written up, but I did stop wearing my name tag at work when I could get away with it. TLDR, got the state government called on me by Karen because the kitchen messed up an order which got replaced free of charge. Cold been fired for a mistake that wasn't even mine. Edit English and sentence structure. Is this Karen? It felt like a Karen. Lol. I used to run a childcare site for after school care at a swanky Christian school. We also had a summer program. During the summer, we had a field trip to one of those giant arcade type places with a pizza buffet. All the parents sent baggies full of quarters for the kids to play with. One first grade girl opened up another kid's backpack and took her quarters out. Of the girls approached me, and the one said, "Stassi took my quarters out of my backpack." I said, "Stassi, did you take quarters out of her backpack?" She nodded yes. I said, "Okay, I'm going to need you not to touch anyone else's backpack again for me. Your mom sent lots of quarters and they're in your backpack. You'll all have plenty to play with." Well, the policy of the organization I work with says that if you discipline a kid about anything or tell their parent about an incident, you have to write it down. I wrote like 100 of these a week. It was no big deal. They occasionally came in handy to have documented behavior to talk to parents about patterns and problem solving. Well, when I told her mom and gave her the form, she demanded that I change the verb stole to took. She was like, I will not sign a legal document saying my child stole 8 quarters. It has to say took. I'm like, okay, so I change it. Then, I get an email the next day formally requesting all copies of this form to be turned over to the parents and the document be struck from the record because she isn't confident that proper research was done and possibly her daughter never took anything to begin with. Okay, lady. So my company basically told me not to say anything and they'd contact her. She never said anything else about it again. They told me that they assured her that it was for our record keeping only and wouldn't follow her daughter in any legal sense. Most of my stories of incredibly rude people are from my time working as an assistant manager in a pizza joint. Unfortunately, of the people in those stories I doubt many actually qualify as Karens, because most of their rudeness seemed prompted by advanced inebriation rather than inherent pettiness. Both are bad, of course, but to be a Karen I think the wickedness has to come soberly, from your core as a terrible human being, rather than from the slurred promptings of alcohol. It's like in Harry Potter, plenty of people did some really bad things, while confounded or imperials, but only the truly bad, following a dark murder snake man of their own volition, earned the title Death Eater. Anyway, one story that sticks out to me all the same. Had a Karen who ordered some unlikely number of pizzas, 4 or 5 of our largest ones, presumably for a party, rather than private consumption. I should note that these pizzas were ridiculously large, rectangular affairs, coming out at only a little under 1 square meter of pizza each. They were accordingly expensive, something like in the mid $20 to low $30 range for just cheese. Point anyway, this lady ordered her mountain of pizza without incident, paying for it over the phone, for pickup about an hour later, which she specified as her desired pickup time, and we had them ready for her. 30 minutes after that the pizzas were still ready for her. 45 minutes after that, the pizzas were still being little troopers, and waiting with puppy-like eagerness, to be ingested by terrible people. All told, it was probably about 2 hours past the time this lady herself specified that she came in to Karen up the place. You're intelligent people, so I'm sure you've already simulated a virtual Karen in your mind and predicted what this real life Karen said and did. But to paraphrase, Karen, these pizzas are cold. Me. That's true. Yes. Kate to the Aaron. I didn't order cold pizza. This is unacceptable. Me. The pizzas were quite warm 2 hours ago when you scheduled your pickup time, ma'am. K-Dog. Something came up. You should have held off on making them until I could get here. Me. Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am. We didn't realize something had come up. Did you call to change the pickup time? Spoiler, she didn't. Vitamin K Ren. Of course not. You should have called me to check that I was still coming. Me. Unfortunately we don't have the staff to both handle orders and reconfirm orders that have already been made. I'll be happy to heat up the pizzas on a low setting oven for a few minutes for you, though. It'll affect the texture a bit, but they'll be warm. KR3N, Destroyer of Worlds. I'm not paying for a heated pizzas. When I order something I expect it to be right. You will make them again for me. I find this is getting overly long, and I'm running out of variations on Karen to call this lady, so suffice it to say that her demands escalated to include a refund of her original money paid for the pizzas already made, a discount for the prospective pizzas she was demanding, the firing of me and another member of the staff who looked at her funny, and a written apology for her time wasted on company letterhead. As an aside, I don't know what a pizza parlor's letterhead would look like, but that is a totally untapped market that I should create products for. I'll make billions. All of this, mind you, was before she even pulled out Strategy K, that is asking for my manager. Since I was my manager that evening, that was a rather easy request to grant, and I'll admit that I revealed the fact with rather more flippancy than I probably should have. She then asked to speak to the owner who, she informed me, she knew well and personally. In Karenese this is known as the nuclear option. Our owner had many faults. He was cheap and crass and dismissive and a whole host of other negative personality traits bundled into the flesh of a short furry man, but he was faulty in ways that were really entertaining to watch when matched against people like Karen's. I called him up and put him on speakerphone, metaphorically grabbing a bag of popcorn. Paraphrasing again, me, yo, boss man, I have a customer in here that knows you well and wants to complain. Boss man, you handle it. I'm almost at Jerry's. Piece of local color note, this was a bar run by a guy named Phil or Bill or something. No one connected with the bar was named Jerry, and no one I know of ever found out the etymology of why it was called that. Me, I tried, but she wants to talk to you about her issue with the 5 party pizzas we made for her. Boss man, fine, put her on. Karen. Screeching noises that approximate human speech, complaint-splaining the issues with me and the rest of the universe. Boss man, thanks for letting me know. Karen. Times_hunger. Did you make the pizzas for her like she asked? Me. Yep, boss man, and they were ready on time. Me. Yep, boss man, okay. Karen. Screeching gains a smug aura of exaltation as she predicts that the universe will soon bow to her whims. Boss man, not paraphrased, and these were totally his exact words. Shut up and stop being a beach. Just take your damn pizzas and let my staff get back to work. He ended the call, leaving Karen to sputter threats about calling the health inspector, the Better Business Bureau, and a few other places like that. It was not pleasant, but the glove satisfaction from hearing him tell Karen off kept me buoyant through it. TLDR. Karen is late to pick up a bunch of improbably large pizzas, is angry that they're cold, gets called a beach when she beaches about it. Male Karen story. I worked retail for a bit in the kitchen section of a department store. A middle-aged white guy comes in and goes up to the stand for most ridiculously overpriced kitchen equipment, a line run by a guy whose name sounds like Schmest and Schmumental, and demands a knockbox. A knockbox, for all you normal people out there, is a small box that matches your coffee machine that you can empty your used coffee grounds into. You then empty the box into the bin. I'm not sure of the point of this, but he really wants one. My colleague says, very politely, oh, we don't sell those, but you can get them online. He loses his sheet. Calls her incompetent, yells how can it possibly be that this is a brand section and yet they don't stock every single item that brand has ever made. He wants one now. Why can't he get one now? This isn't what he expects from this store. Where is the manager of this terrible employee? A manger comes over and gently reiterates that he can totally get a knockbox, just online. Hey, they can help him do that right now if he wants, but it's no use. He is hopped up on Class A entitlement and will not be calmed. Where is he going to put his coffee grounds? In the bin? Like some peasant? No. He's never shopping here again and storms off. Finally, the manager turns round to the rest of us. What a cork, she says. I think I posted this before in a fast food stories thread, but it works here too. When I worked at Subway, a Karen came in and ordered a foot-long meatball sub. Problem was we were currently in the middle of a crazy and unexpected rush and didn't quite have enough meatballs left for a foot long. We were only short like 1 or 2 meatballs. I let her know this and said I could put what was left on there and charge her for a 6-inch. At the time she was fine with this. About 15 minutes after I shouldered left, I was still dealing with the aftermath of the rush when this Karen comes back in. She starts complaining that her foot-long meatball sub didn't have enough meatballs on it. Here's the thing, she didn't have the receipt, so I could show her that she was only charged for a 6-inch and she had already eaten the sub. It's not like she came right back in and said this sub here in my hands doesn't have enough meatballs. It was like 30 to 45 minutes later, and the sub was already eaten. After trying to explain all this to her, she's now screaming in my face. Admittedly, I may have started yelling back at her at this point. Eventually she threatens to sue the store and leaves. At least there was a fun ending. The next day I get a call from the area manager who had heard from this Karen. At first I was a little worried, but then she goes, I reviewed the footage from the cameras. I think you handled it pretty well. If I were there I would jump the counter and act her. Picture this, you're a teenager working in a grocery store in late hours closing up the meat department. Your job is to clean the place and occasionally help a customer with some of the pre-prepared meats and find what aisle has what point. The time is now 8:30 p.m. The store is dead quiet and you're wrapping up your cleaning work and shift, just making sure everything is shiny and chrome and rinsing off the last sudsy dredges from off the butcher tables. You're content with the way the soapy surfaces appear to be nice and clean under what's left of the still soaking tables. Enter Karen. Stage left. Point Karen. Hey, can I get a ribeye cut to about 3 inches thick? You. No, I'm sorry ma'am, we can't cut anything. The butchers leave at around 6 p.m. But I'm happy to. Karen. What do you mean you can't cut meat? Aren't you a butcher? You. No ma'am, I'm the after hours clerk, but I can take an order for you for first thing tomorrow. Karen, this is an outrage. Are you open right now? And is this the meat department? You. Internally. Oh boy, here we go. Yes. Ma'am, the store is open, but the meat department closes at 6 o'clock except for the pre-prepared meats and orders. Karen, I drove from place an hour and a half away, and now you're telling me you won't cut meat, even though you're open. You. Preemptively, I'm sorry ma'am. If you would like, I can call the store manager, but the department is covered in soap. There's nothing we can do tonight. Karen. Yes, call him right now. I want to speak to your manager. Of course. Point enter. Store manager in suit and tie. Stage right. Point explanation of situation and general rudeness from Karen. Point manager. We'll get that sorted for you right away. Your name. Please get the ribeye and take it to the back. You do so reluctantly. Manager with hairnet on stopping mid-stride at seeing the disassembled and soap-covered department. Manager walks back out to Karen, who is waiting triumphantly. Manager, I'm sorry ma'am, we can't cut this tonight, but I can take an order for you for first thing tomorrow. You. Fassipum from out of sight. Point Q. Slap sound. Point MP3. Manager and Karen argue unintelligibly as the stage darkens. End. I told her we that unfortunately weren't doing makeovers that day, we were understaffed and overrun with last minute Christmas shoppers, but that she was welcome to book in and we'd schedule a makeup artist to come in for her. She pointed to a preteen sitting in a makeup chair while my coworker color matched her. What we call a product demo. Karen accused me of blatantly lying. Now fair play to Karen. She sees a girl sitting in a makeup chair, and how is she to know or care that there's a 55-minute difference between a quick demo and a full-blown sit down? We'll pull out all the stops and make you look fabulous darling. That'll be $85 for the hour, fully redeemable an hour. Crappy products please. Makeover. I put on my best retail smile and charm as I attempt to explain this terribly complicated difference to Karen. Oh. Why, that young lady is just having her color matched. If you'd like, I'd be happy to sit you down and match up colors for you too. Only I didn't get that far, because by the time the word just had escaped my lips, the Karen turned a rather unsightly shade of crimson and she began to unleash verbal hellfire down upon me. Young, how dare you? So I'm too old to have my makeup done? Where is your manager? I've never been so insulted in my life. And so on. Very dramatic. It went for a while. I started wondering if she was in danger of passing out. Point well sheet. Obviously I hit a sore spot. At 19 myself, my ability to judge ages wasn't all that developed, but my memory puts her somewhere between 40 and 55. But I'd done makeovers on 92-year-olds. What does age have to do with makeovers anyway? Nothing, obviously. But this is bad. My manager hated it when customers talked to him. Must defuse screaming lady now. Her tirade took several minutes and involved her at one point storming off, then changing her mind and coming back to yell at me some more. At first I couldn't get a word in edgewise. Then when she finally stopped for breath, it didn't seem to matter how much I assured her that that wasn't what I meant at all. That the child in question was literally 12, which was the only reason for my word choice. That we would be happy to provide her with a makeover another day if she'd come look at the calendar with me. That of course I hadn't meant any offense. Eventually I somehow talked her down. I think in the back of her mind she started to realize she was being, like, really crazy. Seeing the child in question Helped a lot for whatever reason. I'd be lying if I said I didn't cry in the bathroom after my shift. Good god, I so don't miss retail. 4 different occasions with different Karens at the same restaurant in Union Square. I used to work at Point on the specials board. Whole red snapper for 2. Karen comes in and wants it for takeout. I warn her it's for 2 people like it says. Oh, that's okay. Fish comes out. Oh my god, that's too big. You never said it would be that big. One thing leads to another and she plays the manager card. The manager listens to the situation and tells her okay, then I'll eat it. She says she lost all faith in this business and left. But, leave forever. Karen calls the restaurant and wants to place an order that was way out of delivery range. Manager says take the order because it was a nice order at like $400 or something. When the order came out, I put in utensils relevant to the amount of meals ordered and a couple extra. I get a call back later that I should really learn how many utensils to include and that they're 1 fork short and I should have a guy bring them 1 plastic fork way out of range during a time when I'm swamped with orders. There was a bar next door, so a lot of drunk white collar idiots usually lingered outside in the middle of the afternoon. One visibly drunk Karen comes in and orders an item. Item comes out. She says that wasn't what she ordered. But of course it was. She demands a discount and I say no. She starts making threats with her red-eyed drunk slurred cunt face and asks for the manager. She says to him I shouldn't be working at the front of a restaurant and I'm the worst worker she's ever seen. He gives her back the money to pacify her and make her leave. He was scared about Yelp reviews because in that area, Yelp is apparently a weapon of mass destruction. Karen is sitting at her table eating. A gentleman at another table behind her stands up from his seat and the seat falls backwards and hits only the chair leg of Karen's chair. She complains to me about it and says straight up in confidence, I want my meal comped. Manager laughs in her face. I loved it. Not sure if a Karen, but it was definitely memorable. This was like 10 years ago and I was working the drive-thru at Wendy's one night. I don't know if it's still like this, but the restaurant I worked in was hardcore about drive-thru times. 90 seconds was our goal average, and we'd get yelled at any time the timer went over, and if we had chronic high times it'd be written up etc. 90 seconds is nothing. Drivers would spend that time and more staring at the menu at the speaker all the time, especially at night. Then they'd spend time driving up and probably another 90 seconds digging through their car for change. I get a Karen who orders like a fat ton of nuggets for her and her 3 kids in the car with her. She takes her sweetest time at the speaker figuring out what each kid wants, then her sweet time getting me her payment, so I'm already over on the timer. She gets her food and spends another 2 minimums checking her bags. So I'm hopping mad about this beach wasting my time by the time she turns back to me in the window and asks for extra sauce. We normally charged for extra nugget sauce, but I just want this lady off my timer, so I grab what she wants and hand it to her. But instead of cupping her hand to accept them, she holds it as flat as she can, and the cups drop to the ground. She looks down, looks at me like it's my fault she can't hold sheet like a normal person, and I sigh and try to hand her some new ones. Same thing. Holds hand flat as possible, stares angrily at me, then starts flipping out, calling me a racist. She was black, I'm white, because as I learned later she wanted me to hold her hand for her to give her the sauce for some reason. If I'm not racist, why am I refusing to touch her hand? The whole 9 yards. Now as a food service worker I already try to not touch others' hands just for sanitary reasons, and it has nothing to do with this lady's skin color, but I realize this lady is not leaving until I touch her. I grab her outstretched hand, put the cups in it, tell her she's wrong, and have a nice night, and walk away. Beach is still in my window 5 minimums later yelling at the manager who had come to the window to see what the fuck was up. Kind of an opposite story, but still relative. My mom and I are at the hospital. It's a large university style hospital and has an info desk. My mom is scheduled for a blood draw and we have no idea where to go, so naturally, we go to the info desk. We wait our turn in line and get to the front. Literal Karen with Karen haircut sitting at desk. Me, hi. My mom needs a blood draw and we are not quite sure where to go. The doctor that ordered it is X. Karen, Well, there's one in building HME. Knowing that H is a large building with multiple floors, do you know where it in H building? And then, I swear, I went crazy for a minute. I could not believe how this woman reacted to the question. She stared at my mom and I for a few minutes and then started singing. She was making up some little tune like do do do. She's looking around her desk, finds a sign that says parking validation and holds it up, starts directing people around us, and hands out validation tickets. Me, thinking maybe she just didn't hear me. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I was hoping you could tell me where in H building my mom has to go. Karen starts singing louder, interrupting herself to guide more people slowly streaming into the building for validations around us. Me, ma'am, in a confused tone, not a stern one, because, yeah, I know, I'm a decent person, and also hate confronting people or being rude. Karen, motions over security lady, what's going on guys? Me, confused and at this point upset. I asked her how to get somewhere, and she started singing and ignoring me, and having people come around me. Karen pulls a binder and slams it on the desk, opens it actually screaming it's on the 3rd floor in room B. Sorry, I don't have this stuff memorized. Me, you could have just told us you needed a minute instead of, you know, singing and ignoring us. And then my mom and I went to her appointment because she had literally wasted about 20 minutes ignoring us while she sang and helped the people behind us, and we were now running late. 2 things I can remember vividly. One instance was at a used bookstore. I saw some younger kids buying Attack on Titan, which I don't read or watch, but know people like, and they said, I wonder what the wall is made out of. And I said it's made out of people. And they laughed, and I said nah, I don't know, I don't watch the show, and to have a good time with the manga. Blindly guessing and joking about it, I guessed something while doing a Soylent Green joke. Karen apparently thought that I knew and spoiled the manga, and Karen was very upset. Came back and demanded a manager and asked that I be fired for spoiling / revealing the book / show. The kids were super uncomfortable and didn't want to be there and knew I was just kidding around. I apologized and explained I was doing a Soylent Green reference. She said next time she's here I better not be letter. Turns out I was right about it being people, but no one knew that at the time. Then at Target, a Karen brought her daughter in looking at cameras. Immediately the mom was asking all sorts of asinine questions and the girl just wanted to pick out a camera and see if she liked it and had no idea where to start. I would start explaining something and the mom would butt in and ask something completely irrational. How many stars is this one? Why is this 4/5 stars? Why is this one $250 and this one $400? What do you mean I might have to buy other lenses? What do you mean Canon lenses don't work in Nikon? Which would have been fine if she'd waited for me to answer these questions. The daughter already knew the answers to point. Then the mom picks a camera at seemingly random and I go to get it and we are out of stock. Then she hits me with this. Well, if it's out of stock, why is it on display? Well, ma'am, we get replenishing stock, so we'll get it back again, just not today. Well, then take it down. Sorry ma'am, we'll get this back soon. Let see if the other Target 15 minutes away has it. Oh, they do. Nope, I'm not driving that far, take this display down. She has the faking Karenacity to take the item info card and hand it to me. I just plain as day dropped it behind the desk and explained that if she doesn't want any other cameras or the one 15 minutes away, I'm not sure what else I can do for her. Meanwhile, the daughter looks like she wanted to die 5 minutes ago. I decide to ignore the mom at this point and speak directly to the daughter. I said, listen, a camera is not like a napkin or a jar of peanut butter. It's like a car. You're gonna have one for a long time before you replace it. It's better to get a good model first and then get new lenses as you go, because you'll get a lot more use out of it. Get the camera you want and pay whatever is comfortable for you. I can't help you here, but don't even rule out a friend's used camera. I work at a well-known local pet store in my town. We mainly deal with aquatics. Had a girl, she was probably 18 to 20, call us and tell us that her 10-gallon fish tank she bought last month for her turtle had busted and she wanted to come in and replace it. My manager had answered the phone and told her that was fine as long as she had a receipt or was in our system. About 10 minutes later she shows up with a tank with the bottom busted out of it and immediately goes, "Hi, I filled this up with water and tried to move it and it broke. I want a new one." I kind of give her a blank what stare and explained that's why it broke, because you picked it up with water in it. She goes, no, I filled it up with water in my bathtub and tried to pick it up to move it, like the bathtub some reason made a difference. I go into explaining that on the piece of paper that comes attached to the glass on the tank explains that you must level the tank before filling it up, because even small tanks can weigh up to 80 pounds when full, and obviously that's going to cause glass to shatter with no support. She just says I didn't know, and I go into asking for a receipt. No, that's fine. We keep all receipts under customer numbers for that reason. We try 4 different phone numbers, no matches. Tell her I can't really do much without proof of purchase. She goes into a long thing of I bought this here. I used my dad's credit card. He paid over the phone. Tries the phone numbers again. Still can't find anything. I tell her all tanks of that brand have a warranty, she could maybe try. She starts cussing. That will take too long. Just throw the tank away. She's just going to release her turtle into a pond. I just shrug. Not even 5 minutes of her walking out, her father calls my store, starts yelling about how he's going to send us a bank statement and that should be enough to get a replacement. I try to explain that, unless it's an itemized list, it's not really going to help, and in between him yelling I also mention the warranty she could try. Well, why didn't you tell her that? I did. She refused and left. Of course, he asks to speak to my manager after 5 minutes of hearing him yell at my manager on the phone. My manager just goes, "We'll give you a new tank. Just stop yelling." We are told she'll be back in 15 minutes, so we set a tank behind the counter for her. Cunt never even comes to get the new tank. It sat behind out counter for 3 days with her name on it. Not necessarily a I need to speak to your manager type of Karen, but my old friend's mom, Karen, was just a stuck in high school type of woman. When her daughter and my other friends would gang up and nitpick at anything I did that they didn't personally agree with or thought was weird, she would gang up on me too. This group of friends ostracized me for years for the clothes I wore, music I listened to, people I talked to / friends I had, etc. And Karen was involved with mostly all of this. Note, I'm not friends with this group of people anymore. Haven't been in contact with them in years. I think she wanted to fit in with us to make herself feel better for whatever reason. The final straw was when her daughter told her mother and my mother that I was basically a delinquent when I got my first boyfriend in high school, started smoking weed, and started going to parties. My friend just wasn't okay with this for some reason. Her mother lied to me one night over text and said she wanted me to come to her house to hang out, but when I got there it was just her and my mother, who proceeded to rip me apart for doing what a lot of normal 15-year-olds do in high school. Sure, all of my friends were downstairs listening to me get roasted for an hour and a half as well. Made up lies to get my mother worked up as well, and she completely lost trust in me for a long time. Karen was a real bitch. Has me and my family blocked on most social media platforms now too. Good faking riddance, Karen. I used to work in a Forbes 5-star spa in the massage department. Karen, real name, was at the spa for over 20 years and could be a real bitch sometimes because seniority and gatekeeping, because she was on the 5-star committee. I worked a night shift Friday and had to be in early Saturday morning. On weekends, because it gets so busy, they put out a schedule for who gets what room. They didn't put the sheet out Friday night. After I broke down the room I was in, I stocked it for both shifts Saturday and left a note for manager who would be there in the morning, and on the board saying schedule wasn't out. I prepped room for following day. I claimed it. I get there normal time Saturday morning and Karen is in my room. She took all of the supplies I neatly stacked and organized and put them on the massage table. I was like, what the fuck? She said her name was on the room. I said I left 2 notes and I already prepped the night ahead. Boss comes in, he said I was scheduled in the one lone massage room on the other side of the spa because it was so far away it was usually stocked. So I was like, whatever. I had to put away all of the supplies I left for 2 shifts because she didn't want to and was busy. I get over to the other room, had to restock and prep because last person in there didn't. Had to rush to get ready and barely made it for first guest on time. When in that specific room you have to walk across spa to massage lounge to get your next guest after flipping room and taking your previous guest to their next service, which could have been anywhere on the first or second floor or the respite rooms in 10 minutes or less. You also could not be late for the next appointment. Everything was running smoothly until midway end of my shift. I go back to massage lounge to bring my guest to the room. They weren't there, so I follow protocol and recheck schedule. W/spa attendants, check respite rooms and other communal areas, recheck schedule, find sticky note. Karen took my guest because her guest cancelled last minute, so I'm out the money. I was pissed. We were straight commission. I don't get paid if I don't have services. I booked in last minute for a shorter service and the rest of the shift was fine, and at changeover headed back to leave. She was trying to leave before I got there, saw me and said, "Oh shit, I was trying to avoid you." I was just like, what the fuck? Karen got petty with her and said for being someone with that much seniority and caring so much about our 5-star standards, she really seemed to enjoy screwing over her coworkers and the overall guest experience. As a cashier, I have sadly too many of these. Point an item rang up as $12.99 and she said it's supposed to be $9.98. I said not a problem, let me change that for you. Types in $9.99, then she yells at me because I'm shorting her. I was bagging items for this one lady and the bag had a small hole in it that I didn't see, and she said, "This bag has a hole in it. Can I get a new one?" Me, "Yeah, not a problem." Her, "I shouldn't have tell you how to do your job." Me, instinctively and under my breath, "Then don't." She wanted to speak to a manager after that. Our internet was down, so our system couldn't take cards, but we could take cash or checks, but we would have to keep the checks. We usually hand them back, so like old school checkout type of thing, and we had 2 people warning everyone that walked in that we could not take cards at that time. Karen comes up to me and I warn her before we start that we are unable to take cards. Alright, that's fine. I ring up her items and she wants to try her card, so I let her. No dice. So she writes a check and I put it in our system to verify the check. Approved. So I'm going to keep it. Then she gets upset that I'm not able to give the check back. I explain to her why I can't. Then she wants to speak to a manager and starts to yell at my boss on how we suck because we couldn't take cards or give back a check due to a situation beyond our control. Having a customer facing career means I have hundreds of stories, but let me tell you 2. I'm a brand manager for a well-known kids entertainment brand. Today we received a phone call from a crazed Karen who lost her sunglasses at one of our venues 3 weeks ago. She phoned into our contact center 7 times in the space of 15 minutes demanding somebody give her an answer. The agents kept explaining that the venue will take a bit of time to get back to us, an hour maximum. She refused to give us a description of the glasses and claimed she can't remember and we should send her a photo of our lost and found so she can tell us which ones are hers. We deal with thousands of customers, you beach. If we haven't found them 3 weeks later, we don't have them. Also give us more than 3 minutes to try locate your cheap ass sunglasses in a 4500 SQM venue. Thanks. The thing is, she wasn't even sure if she lost them with us in the first place, but wouldn't accept that they weren't found with us. A few weeks ago a woman sent me an email pleading poverty. We are a popular choice for kids' birthday parties, but it's a bit pricey, so not always affordable for everybody. She claimed her son was begging for a party at our venue, but she wasn't in a position to afford one, so asked if we would give her a $1,500 party for free. Can't hurt to ask the question, right? I explained that we can't sponsor a whole faking party for her, but I wanted her son to have a special birthday anyway and would give her 2 free passes to come and enjoy the venue with a friend. This is way more than we would give anybody, so I was definitely going out of my way to make this kid's day. She replied back with, "That won't do. I need a minimum of 4 passes." Not taking no for an answer. Her kid really wants it. Can't I understand? Like sorry beach what? She then continued to call into the contact center multiple times demanding that 2 free passes weren't good enough, she would need 4, and that I said it was okay. Luckily I warned the agents ahead of time. I can't afford a Porsche. Must I just walk into a dealership and demand a free one? Because I really want one, can't you understand? Tell your kid no and host a party in your backyard like the rest of us. Beach. I had a Karen throw an actual cup of extremely hot coffee at my face. She came through the drive-thru and ordered an extra large mocha latte with whipped cream. I read her order back and asked if the latte was hot or cold. Hot, said she. 3.67 said me. She pulls up, pays, drives forward a couple feet before slamming on brakes, parking her car, and storming inside. What the fuck is this? She shrieks. A mocha latte, ma'am, says I. This is not what I ordered, says Karen. XTRLG mocha latte with whip, asks I. Yes, says Karen. That's what I gave you, I say. There's no whipped cream, says Karen, looking smug like she'd caught me out. I took the cup from her and opened the lid to reveal whipped cream. Well, I wanted a dome lid. Karen stammers. Dome lids don't fit hot latte cups, ma'am. Those are for cold and frozen beverages. Hot lattes and hot drinks come with the white plastic lid with the sippy nozzle, says I. Well, I want a dome lid. Karen insists. Would you like for me to pour your hot latte into a cold beverage cup, ma'am? I ask. Fine, do that, says Karen. So I do, even giving her extra whip and a dash of extra espresso, because otherwise there would have been an inch gap left in the cup. I put the dome on and add the whip. I want the latte sleeve, Karen says. The latte sleeve doesn't fit the cold cups or the regular styrofoam coffee/hot drink cups. They only fit the wax paper latte cups, ma'am, I say. But the cup is too hot, whines Karen. Would you like for to put it in the extra large coffee cup? You'll lose a little of your drink because the cups are slightly smaller than latte cups, but you'll be able to hold the cup without a sleeve because they are thicker. I offer. Can I have a dome lid with my thicker cup? Karen asks. No, ma'am, those only fit cold beverage cups. They don't fit any other cups in the store. You currently have the only style of cup the dome lids will fit, I say. But the cup is too hot to hold, Karen says. I stare at her for a moment. What would you like me to do, ma'am? I can't control how the lids were designed. Certain lids were designed for certain cups. I can't change how physics work. Go fuck yourself. Karen screams as she hurtles her hot latte at my face. Luckily I had experience dodging sheets thrown at my face, because my brother used to aim for my face when throwing things at me as a kid, so I learned early. She left and nearly hit someone peeling off. I got her plate numbers from the drive-thru cam and reported her. The coffee was hot enough that I would have gotten first-degree burns. The latte machine expressing liquid at temps between 118 degrees and 125 degrees. They never bothered to look into it, and she continued to come to our store. I served her every time, so she had to look me in the eye knowing what she did. She liked her lattes hot, so she always asked for extra water to be added. I always wash the metal stirring spoons in the water before adding it to her drinks. I haven't posted this in an entitled parents subreddit yet because it literally happened 3 weeks ago and I've been non-stop busy, but I'm not that confident in my art, so if anyone says anything degrading about my art I'll literally take it to heart because I believe that too. And so this Karen with the typical Karen haircut threatening to sue the manager of Kmart got in my face after I declined that their child draw in my expensive sketchbook. It's a moleskin like 5/9 or something. It's the small one you can carry about, but it's not tiny. Anyways, the beach is like $20. And she legit told me my special little snowflake Jimmy could sell his art that is more worth your sketchbook and your life. My son is an up and coming artist. This kid is like 5 and has less potential than a wet piece of bread in the sink, but given I'm a sad fact about my art I said oh well. The kid rips out all of my drawers that I spent hours or even days on and starts scribbling on any and all pages and proceeds to walk away with my sketchbook. My dumbass is kinda at fault for even handing it over, but I go to a security guard, tell them the store and outfit the people are in, and tell them they stole an item from me they are hunted down, and the kid has drawn on every page just about. and I tell the guard it wasn't like that. Before he took it, the Karen begged and pleaded that she just bought it for her wet piece of bread son. I, from memory, read off everything I had on the front in a cover of my sketchbook like my Instagram and MLF lost. Now there's a small court's claim because the lady did some things to get arrested. I got asked if I wanted to press charges because it was destruction of my property. Lady spent like a week in jail or something, and since there's so much evidence that it is mine, not only will she pay back the 20 it costs to get a new one, but the personal worth of the drawings. I sell my art and 3 of the drawings were traditional commissions, so add on $30 for each of the 3 drawings, plus my legal fees. My lawyer has already told me that there is absolutely no way that this lady can even try, especially because we were able to get them all, because that's where this happened. If I didn't say so already, to let us use the security footage as additional proof. The court date is in 14 days. Sorry for the long post. TLDR at the bottom. We have a crazy neighbor Karen. Our complex is basically 8 plexes with attached garages. Her unit has the front door / patio / walkway facing the street. My husband drives a large company truck to do mobile repairs. He often takes it home and parks on the street just in case there are emergency calls. So one day, he parks on the street in front of Karen's apostrophe unit, which by the way is totally legal. He tells me later that one of our neighbors was bothering him about parking there, but he's a really light-hearted guy at first and usually doesn't make things a big deal. A few weeks of this goes on. The complex next to us was being repaved, so it's not really like he can park anywhere else. Then finally comes home and is really upset. He told me that she had just gone ballistic and was screaming at him, and could I help him move his truck so I could spot him. I think he also didn't want to deal with her alone at this point too. We walk over there, and this total Karen, I'm talking she had the haircut and everything, opens her door and screams at me, "Oh good, maybe you will be more reasonable than your husband." I hate confrontation, but it's not like I could ignore her screaming at me, right? I said, "Ma'am, it's the street, he is legally allowed. Don't you want to be neighborly?" I have no idea what the hell she's talking about, so I just let her pop off. "If we need an ambulance, they can't get in here because you are blocking the walkway." She is like 30, married, no kids. Don't know why she's so paranoid, but okay. There is 5 feet in between the fence and the street with driveways on either side. You really think emergency service people really can't traverse that, Karen? I said he's allowed to park here. He's moving the truck anyway. What else can I do? You can speak with your husband and control him. Now, I'm no feminazi or nothing, but if you think that I can control my husband, and apparently that's my job, I'm done talking to you. I reiterated that it's the street. He can park here if he wants. Well, that's not very neighborly of you. Yeah, because you screaming at people is super neighborly. I offered to put her in touch with the people who can put up no parking zones for disabilities, as I have a friend who's disabled and he had to get special signs for his street so no one parks there. I barely get the words out of my mouth. Then you have a friend who's disabled, yet you still let your husband do this? Putting people in danger. Should've kept my mouth shut. Meanwhile, my husband came back over after moving the truck and is making friends with her husband, who was working in the garage, boring it out. She's still screaming about neighborly this, and I've complained so many times to the condo board that it's the street, they can't do anything, Karen. I offered again to put her in touch with the people who get no parking signs, and she's still screaming. So I raise my voice for the first time and say I'm going to go, as this is no longer productive. "So you're not gonna talk to your husband? You really are a bad person." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am. Have a great night." She storms off into her house as I walk away. Husband's hugged it out, lol. But it doesn't stop there. Now that I was aware of her craziness, I started paying attention. The harassment was constant. She would take pictures of him parking on the street, even if it wasn't in front of her place. She would scream at him whenever she saw him. And now, Karen has decided my husband deserves to be fired for legally parking on the street. My husband's truck is branded, so she called 3 separate times to complain about him parking there and how it's been there 4 days, and she knows it's an employee etc. The first time, my husband was in the office grabbing his daily work orders. The second time, he was not even in the country. So obviously his bosses knew Karen was lying. And the third, well, my husband may or may not have allegedly maybe said some not nice things, and since he's 6 feet 3 inches, 230 pounds with a Viking beard, he can be very intimidating, which I'm sure could perhaps come off as threatening. Allegedly. But since the other calls were fake, they dismissed that one too. Well Karen, we won't be your problem anymore very shortly. Possession on new house is September 16th. I hope you enjoy your hateful Karen-filled life, and I hope some really bad neighbors move in soon. TLDR husband legally parks on street in front of Karen's house. Karen freaks out and tries to get him fired. He allegedly leaves a brick on her front lawn. Bosses don't believe her cause she always lying. I worked at Radio Shack back in '98. Pagers were a big thing back then. Cell phones weren't cost effective, and coverage sucked. Pagers were like $30 I think, and included a year of service, no contract. Some 14-year-old girl comes in over the weekend by herself and buys a pager. We set it up, test call it, it works. She asks about return policy. We tell her we need everything in the box and a receipt. It has to be clean and in reasonable condition. She leaves the store, pager in her jeans pocket, box and receipt in bag. 2 days later, Karen comes in all pissed because her daughter got a pager behind her back. She walks up to teenage me and proceeds to demand a refund. I look her in the eye and say sure, I need a box, receipt, and item must be in reasonable condition. Karen thinks yelling will replace these things because her 14-year-old daughter tossed the box and receipt out. I smile and politely repeat the return policy. She goes crazy, swearing, demanding to talk to a manager. I tell her the manager is on his day off. She can't talk to him because he isn't there. She demands I call him. Smiling tell her I can't because he lives in the next town over and we can't call long distance on our phone. She keeps yelling. Still smiling, I say one secretary, I'll go get you some information. Come back with manager's business card with his schedule written on it and some 1800 number for customer satisfaction line or some such. She's still yelling. I tell her I've done all I can for her. If she doesn't need something else, she needs to leave. She yells. I tell her to leave or I'll call more security. She yells. I call security, tell them I have a woman making a scene and I need to have her removed. She storms out, turns around and throws the pager back into the store. My coworker picks up the pager, shrugs, and says free pager and pockets it. We never heard from her again. Security shows up 5 minutes later. Coworker tells the guy she left, thanks them for coming. They leave. Back at my first job, it was essentially just a local Dairy Queen of sorts. We would get plenty of older customers, a lot of which were difficult, but none compared to this one older gentleman in particular. It was a fairly busy night, and there was a massive line out front. Normally we'd ask everyone if they wanted their receipt, but during a rush we would just save a little time and skip the question and throw them out right away, since 99% of people say no. And eventually our Karen of this story comes up to the register. He was pretty normal, wasn't really rude or anything, just placed his order nice and easy. But then the girl at the register threw out his receipt, and for whatever reason, that just really set him off. Immediately, he just starts berating her, going off about how anyone would be able to just dig through our trash and steal all of his credit card info, and identification, and address, and a bunch of other nonsense. Now, I don't know how many of you have looked at a receipt recently, but there is literally none of that info on those. He was honestly probably one of those grandpas that believed everything he read on Facebook, because it boggled my mind how any human could actually believe what he was spouting. Eventually the girl at the register offers to reprint his receipt for him, but no. This man literally made her sift through the garbage and find his specific receipt in a mountain of other crumpled up dirty ones, all while holding up the entire line. Eventually he got his order, complained one more time to the manager, and promptly left point. But it doesn't end there. I was opening the store the next morning, and before we were even open we get a phone call. Same dude. Went on for another 10 minutes about how horrible of a business we are, and that he reported us to the federal something or other, and that we were gonna get shut down. My manager was kinda just like okay pal and hung up. It then became a joke for a while that identity theft was on our job description. TLDR, old guy got angry at us for throwing out his receipt because he thought anyone could just dig through the garbage and use it for identity theft. He then called back the next day to complain again and say that he had reported us to the authorities and was gonna have us shut down. Oddly enough, this Karen worked with me. I worked at Dillard's for a short period of time. I suggest nobody ever work there. They treat their employees like garbage. It was a 3-story Dillard's, and I worked on the 3rd floor. It was our furniture, electronics, bedding, luggage, and home departments. Needless to say, very low traffic on the entire floor. I was behind a counter texting my now ex-fiancé at the time, asking about my father who we had been helping out. He was stage 4. At Dillard's, there's a manager for basically every department. This was about a month and a half into me working there. This Karen, obviously a manager I've never seen, walks up to the counter and asks why I'm not on the floor to greet customers. Nobody is on our entire level, and then she sees the phone in my hand and says you're not allowed to be on your phone while you're working. It needs to stay in your car or go in your locker. Give it to me and I'll give it back to you at the end of the day. I said excuse me, and she repeated herself. I tried to be nice, so I responded with I'm not really comfortable giving you my phone. I was checking on my dad. I'll stay off of it now, but I need it for emergencies. And she had the audacity to say give them the store number. If there's an emergency, they can call you on that. To which I responded with a firm but polite I'm not going to give you my phone. I'm sorry. She then had the testicular fortitude to say, if you don't give me your phone you're going to get written up. I lost it. 1. I don't know who you are, but you're not my manager. 2. I'm not 15 and this isn't high school. You're not going to confiscate my phone like I'm a child. That's ridiculous. 3. I have a reason to have my phone on me at all times, and if Dillard's can't respect that it's for my family's safety, then they're not the company I thought they were, and definitely not for me. She said I'm going to have to write you up. What's your name? So I responded doesn't matter, you'll figure it when you have to go and tell the department manager you got one of her employees to quit. As I was logging out and finishing everything I was supposed to be doing, she said you can't quit, you need to unpack a bunch of the Christmas merchandise. Told her she could have fun with that, and I was in fact quitting. Got a call from my now former manager an hour later begging me to come back in and even offering me a $1 raise. I of course immediately rejected. Fact that Karen Beach worked in a small clothing store. This was in the mid-90s when people still wrote checks, and the owner made a huge point of telling us to never accept a post-dated check from a customer. If you accepted a post-dated check and it bounced, the bank wouldn't cover it. She made it clear we'd hear about it if she found any post-dated checks in the till in the evenings, etc. We had to initial all checks we accepted, so she'd know who took them. So, on my next shift, a perfectly reasonable looking woman came in with her teenage daughter. Daughter picked out some clothes. Her mom was writing a check. I noticed she put the next day's date by mistake. No big deal. I'm sure it was innocent. I said as nicely as I could, oh, it's actually the 8th, not the 9th. So, oh, well if you could put the correct date I'd appreciate it. She got super testy right away and started arguing with me. Why should I change it? Well, we can't accept any post-dated checks, and I explained why, emphasizing I knew she just made an honest mistake, but this was the store's policy, and that I'd get in trouble with my manager because I had to approve the check personally. Jesus. She went off. Well, you need to start thinking for yourself. Make your own decisions. Ma'am. I'm asking you to correct the date. Her daughter was mortified. I want to talk to your manager. She's not here now, but she'll be happy to explain the policy to you. I'm going to call her tomorrow. And she left the store yelling at me the whole way out the door, and I yelled back she'll be happy to tell you the same thing I just did. Ugh. It was the most totally unnecessary and reasonable response. I never forgot it because it was so petty and dumb. Hey there. I know I'm in the late train, but I remembered seeing this while with friends who have all had this teacher by the name Karen. Of course that's not what we called her, and remembered the year of trauma and bullying and upset she caused me. I'll start in chronological order with all of the things and all of the ways she caused us pain. Beginning of the year. Refused to call my trans friend and I by our preferred name without parental approval. Of course, them's the rules, but the other teachers were able to bend back quote. Eventually, my friend got permission, but I didn't, so I suffered the year, hurting every time I had to hear that name. Got mad if we called her ma'am, which we did, because we thought she required hardcore, old school respect. Nope, lost all of our papers, yelled at us saying we did it, and then made us redo full packets of work, because she was incompetent. Oh god, I blocked out the events of this year, because she hurt me so bad. Starting to forget, yelled at me, and public ally humiliated for doodling in class, to control my crippling anxiety for just being within the same vicinity as her, then yelled at me again for explaining myself. Saw my friend at the airport over April break. She said, "Come on, it's my break. Why do I have to see you now?" And then openly said to my friend's parents, how come her brother is so good but she's just chose favorites, and we all knew it. Broke a promise to my friends. They were noisy, so she gave them a week to quiet down, and told them this. She then moved them 2 days later and not a week. To our joy, though, my friend repatriated, and Karen freaking CRIED got mad at me for using purple pen, because she used pupil to grade. Understandable, but literally, it's just a freaking color. When I asked her if a certain practice sheet was absolutely necessary, because she didn't specify, she yelled at me, "Do you have authority issues or something?" Which, 1, makes no sense, and has no correlation, and 2, is an absolutely horrible thing to ask a middle school child, because she has no clue if I actually do have a crippling mental problem, which I freaking do. Ouch. Continued referring to me as my birth gender incorrectly, even after I told her to do otherwise. The worst of all. This one is not in chronological order, because it's terrible and works as the overall kicker. She should been expelled for this, but she had tenure. Even with such, she should have been expelled. She was suspended for 30 days, because when a child misbehaved once many years ago. She point spat point on point this child point, that's all. I don't want to dwell on this woman anymore, because the thought of the things that have happened hurts me. It might not sound as bad as it was to me, and I'd say that's because my memory has blocked out a lot of different things. I don't really know how to conclude this, because this is my first ever post on Reddit, so, bye. Hope my traumatic events have brought some joy into your life. Please forgive any errors as I'm not proficient using Reddit, but my friends asked me to share this experience. A couple of weeks ago I was doing some shopping at my local Walmart. As I'm in a wheelchair, despite my long arms I'm limited on my reach, and was having to really stretch to reach a box of mashed potatoes. Another customer, my friends named her Karen, when I told them the story, was very nice, and handed me the box with a, "Here you are, honey." I thanked her, and attempted to roll to the next item on my list. She then told me, "Here, let me help you," and informed me that my sport wheelchair had no push handles, and then grabbed the back of my chair to push me. I told her, "I got it. Thank you." She started insisting, and started pushing my chair again. This time my hand was on the tire portion of my wheel and her push wedged my thumb between the brake and tire. And she kept pushing, grinding my thumb more. I yelled, "Thank you, ma'am, but I have this. Please don't ever touch anyone's wheelchair without permission as you're hurting me." She replied, "I'm sorry, honey, but as a good Christian we must always help unfortunate people like you. It's alright to be mad about it." Side note. I was in a great mood thinking about the Christmas meal I was going to fix for the people coming for Christmas. I was in a good mood. Until this person, Karen. This back and forth went on for about a minute before a Walmart employee, that is incredibly kind, informed the lady that she would be glad to help me, save me, and that she could go on with her shopping. The lady just wouldn't go away. Just kept doubling down on how she should help the helpless people like me. The employee finally said, "Look, just leave him alone. I think you're messing with a ticking time bomb and he's going to blow up at you if you." I blew up. Because of the lady pushing me, my foot and leg were twisted between a support post and a shelf, and twisting my whole body. I was hurting badly, and it took me a moment to get my breath back. When I was able to, I started with a very colorful and inventive line of profanity that ended with, "And if you don't get the F away from me, I'm going to mow your sorry down. You're lucky I don't call the cops on you." With a lot of huffing and complete lack of understanding of what she did wrong, she finally went back to her shopping and left me the hell alone. People like this are common and just can't seem to understand that people who have a disability are still people. If we need help, we are fully capable of asking for it. That wonderful Walmart employee, her and people like her are just awesome. She stood up for me and didn't have to. She was putting her job on the line for me, and I very much appreciate it. I know for a fact she would have been happy to help me if I needed it, but just let me do my own thing. All I was doing was shopping. This happened near the end of last year. For background info, I'm a very secluded person. I enjoy company, but I like to spend my trips home by myself listening to music, so I put my bag in the seat next to me so I don't feel crammed in. Of course, if the train is too full and people need a seat, I move the bag so they can sit. So anyway, I'm running late because my work couldn't find the key to the changing room and I board a busy second train. A dolled up middle-aged woman walks towards me, her makeup outlining her wrinkles, so I begin to move my bag to give her the seat. But then she says, "Did you buy an extra ticket for your bag?" Already I'm a tad irritated and make a failed comeback line that goes over her head. I still let her sit, to be the bigger man. Big mistake. It becomes quickly apparent that she's already had a few drinks, not enough to have slurred words, but enough to make her very loud and very annoying. She spends most of the first few stops commenting on how rude another passenger is for having a window seat next to his seat when there's a man standing next to him, and how he should move over or offer him the seat. Not once does she realize that if the man wanted to sit down, he would have asked the rude man for the seat himself and seemed rather happy talking to another standing passenger. As more seats became available, one of the passengers she was talking to asked the standing man if he wanted a seat, but he said no, as he was enjoying the company of the guy he was talking to, which shut her up on that topic. She then went on a weird argument with me and the other passengers around her on how it's a waste of time worrying about stuff like dying and who your kids go to when you die. Talks about how she's going to a nightclub, and then it comes apparent that she's on the train for the whole trip, same as me. I don't think there's even a nightclub in my town. Cut to the last few stops, it's just me and her sitting next to each other. She could have moved, but she didn't. She tried to bin my bottle of Pepsi, but I refused as I wanted to recycle it. She then said you could thank me for the offer, which I did, rather half-heartedly. So at this point I wanted to get away from this woman, so as the last stop approached I got up to get to the door. Excuse me, what? Excuse me, can I get past? What's the magic word? I was confused. I was raised to believe that excuse me was polite enough, but I added, please. She let me out, and I tried to leave. You could thank me. I was having none of it. She then ranted on how rude I was, and how your parents must be very proud of you. I sarcastically commented on how nice she was, but she didn't seem to think it was sarcastic, saying that she was nice, and I was horrible. As I waited on the doors, she dragged a poor bystander into this, saying how far a thank you goes. When the doors finally opened, I explained to her that I only thank those who deserve it, and left as the Dropkick Murphys blasted in my earphones. I felt like a bad as this feeling was ruined when I realized I left my iPod charger on the train. When I worked at Walgreens, I was really sick one day, but it was short notice, so they wouldn't let me call off. Whatever, I came in and requested if I could work in the back organizing the coolers or something, because I was super sick but nothing serious, snot everywhere type of sick, and my manager put me on the register. I tried my hardest to reason with her, but no, she wanted me on register. I bought myself a bunch of napkins and hand sanitizer, and did my job to the best of my ability, tried to be pleasant to the customers, shot them some corny jokes, sorry I'm sick, I think it might be a plot to get you back in, to buy more cold medicine, apostrophe. Eventually I got a stereotypical looking Karen type. She was really upset that I was sick to the point that I had to be as hands off with her stuff as possible, but surprisingly she wasn't really all that bad about it, or so I thought. I got called into my manager's office the next day, or couple days later, I don't quite remember, because this lady had called into the store to complain about me. She was complaining about how gross I was, because I was sick. As if anyone that sick is working, because they want to, but that's not the worst of it. My manager played me the tape of the phone call of this lady screaming and ranting about me, and most of it just wasn't true, saying I snotted all over her sheet and that. I was also just being rude in general. Other than that, I didn't elaborate too much on it, but I actually really went over the top trying to accommodate her, and she acted like she recognized I was giving the best service I could in person. But then she called and gave this crazy rant. I couldn't believe how crazy interface the lady was about it. I've had a few points recently moved into a new place. I was going into the lobby carrying groceries and my neighbor was also entering the lobby. She unlocked the door for herself, but immediately slammed it saying I could be an intruder. We met before, so I wasn't a stranger. She did it multiple times saying the same thing. The complex 4 different keys. Lobby, apartment door, storage unit section, and one for the pool. One of those keys also opened the door to the gym, but I wasn't sure which one. I go to the gym, and I'm trying to figure out which one does it. Karen was also about to enter, so I asked her which key it was, and she said she couldn't tell me, and let herself in. Next day she's carrying in groceries and I decided to slam door behind me, so she has to put her stuff down and open it herself. She gets mad and reports me to the staff for being rude. Worked at a Wendy's. Lady demands a plain sandwich and says plain constantly and demands that I yell to the maker that it has to be plain and that I circle on the receipt the word plain. Give her a plain chicken sandwich like she ordered. She comes up after eating half of it and complains where's the mayonnaise. I said she asked for it plain. Plus our chicken sandwiches didn't come with mayo and there were mayo packets right next to her table, and she yelled to my boss that I was incompetent and whoever heard of a chicken sandwich without mayonnaise. So glad I got my degree and I don't have to work with people like that anymore. I do work in car rental, so had my time with a bunch of Karens. I will give you the latest one. Apart from short-term rentals, we offer long-term as well, 1 to 5 years. Karen took 3 cars a year ago for 3 years time. After a few months, payment problems arrive, but after some time everything is paid in full. 2 months ago payments stopped coming. We dissolve the agreement and ask them to give the cars back. They stop answering our phones, emails, won't open the doors in their company for anyone. Cars have vanished. Karen from time to time writes us an email that she did not get any invoices and she doesn't have to pay anything. She goes to a police station and says that we are harassing her, that her mother got a heart attack when our employees went to her house to find missing cars. The whole thing starts getting really ugly with all of the threats thrown in our direction. We decide to inform the police about missing cars because we depleted every other polite way to take them back. We offer Karen last chance for a peaceful solution. She gives the cars back. We will cancel the police and theft accusation. She responds with a very elaborate letter with a lot of cursing that I can summarize with go fuck yourself. You can't tell me what I can do. I own you beaches. Police can't do shit. We send our employee to their office early in the morning every day because the police wouldn't do shit on their own. It's vacation time. They are short-handed. Don't have time to find 3 vehicles. We have to stop the vehicles in the move to get the car keys and documents. Karen picked up the cars from the dealership, so she had the spare keys with her. After a day of observing the office, our employee sees one of the missing cars, immediately calls the police and follows it, while giving his exact location to the officials all the time. They arrive at some warehouse spot and boy oh boy 2 remaining cars are also there. Police arrive, takes the cars, and while getting statements from Karen employees. Karen arrives, tears are falling. She says she is the victim. We are the bad company. She will go bankrupt if we take the cars. Tells a lot of lies. How we threatened her and her family. Meanwhile, police officers arrest one of the guys they were speaking with. The guy was wanted for some crimes. Karen starts threatening the police officers that she will go to their superiors and that they will be fired. You know Karen stuff. Police take our statement at the spot. Took like 5 minutes. Gives us the cars with the keys and off we go. We drive off and see Karen screaming and waving her hands in the air. Not our problem anymore. Late in the evening, police calls that they took Karen to the station so they can take her statement. She was there 5 hours, taking turns between crying, screaming, and making threats against us and officers. No criminal charges were issued, and we are still waiting for our money. When I was a student, I worked on campus police as a supervisor. Shifts were usually based on university events like sports games, dormitory parties, etc. Sometimes shifts were broken up into smaller segments with different crews. In order to accommodate people's schedules and needs, I was working a basketball tournament and took over from 2 guys, one of whom was an assistant chief. The job was simple: keep a roundabout clear, because part of the road had been blocked due to construction, keep the front of the gymnasium clear, save for pickups and drop-offs, and ensure that people parking in handicap spots had hangers. While I'm inside and warming up, it's Canada and cold AF, we didn't see that someone had parked in a handicap spot. I told the guy working with me to write down the license plate. This woman comes out and starts freaking out. She wants to know why some cars are parked in the grass next to the gym. Not my jurisdiction. Morning crew let it happen, and one of those guys was my boss, so I don't really care. I inform her this. She freaks out because she feels she deserves special treatment, more or less. In the end, she says "Fuck it, tow me." Then she gets in her car and fucks off. I'm inside and warming up again. Not 10 minutes later, she comes in and says, sweet as can be, "Excuse me, Mr. Security Guy?" I'm pretty sure I actually stood up and was like, Jesus Christ, what? Because I knew some BS was coming. I basically had to re-explain to her that where other people parked was not my problem. If it wasn't in one of the 3 areas I was told to watch, that if I radioed security they wouldn't care, and that she wasn't going to get special treatment. I was like 90% sure she was going to ask for my supervisor. If she did, I'd have turned around, said, "Cypher, can you come over here?" Then turned around and said, "Oh wait, I'm Cypher." I work a smoke shop where we sell bongs. I don't live in a state like Colorado, so if you say anything about weed, I'm required by law to kick you out. So this Karen comes in and asks me if she can look at something out the case where we keep the bongs. I hand her the one she wanted to look at, and almost immediately she asked, "How do you smoke weed out of this?" I said politely, "Ma'am, you're not supposed to say that. I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Then she started screaming about freedom of speech and "you're discriminating me." So I told her to leave or I call the cops. And about 2 minutes after she left, we got a call from Karen wanting to talk to the manager. Me recognizing her voice, I humored her and brought the phone to the manager. She listened to her complain about her being discriminated by me because she smoked weed. The manager said, "Never call this number again and don't come back." The manager turned to me and said, "What an idiot." And about a week or 2 later, I was in the bathroom and got bored and decided to look up the store I worked at and see the reviews on Google. And after some scrolling, lo and behold, I read the review by the lovely Karen. She gave us 1 star and commented I asked them about a product and they threatened to call the cops on me. So I clicked her name and it showed she left a lot of sheet reviews to a lot of places for stupid reasons like renovations to Kroger is too big, or there's a homeless man outside the liquor store. And there's my personal favorite, they won't let me in 1 minute after they close. Later I showed my coworkers, we had a real good laugh out of it. Edit. Places she gave bad reviews on are still in good business because barely no one cares about reviews. The co-owner of an engineering firm who had contracted my company, which I had clearly explained to her considered entirely of me and some incorporation paperwork to produce scale models, illustrations and technical drawings of a multi-million-dollar home, balked at the final bill when it came due, despite having agreed to my rates, signed off on my time and expenses, accepted the final product, and providing written agreement to pay the final amount. She called me to try and negotiate the price down, but I wouldn't budge. So she demanded to speak to my manager. I was so shocked, it took me a minute to gather my thoughts before explaining that I was the owner of the company. She called me a liar and claimed that you can't legally run a CAD consulting firm without a certified engineer on staff. It only got worse from there. I ended up suing her company to collect, and because I could prove bad faith, remember, I had signed documents agreeing to literally everything, my lawyer got to tack on punitive damages and his own fees. She ended up owing about 5x what I charged her. I spent almost 4 months trying to collect before I managed to get an order from the judge to her company's bank, who finally turned over the money. A few weeks later, I got served. She was suing me for taking the money she owed me out of her bank account. Before I even had the chance to get that lawsuit dismissed, I got a call from her fellow co-owner explaining that he'd bought her out and fired her. Apparently, she'd faked over a couple other contractors as well, and the senior staff threatened to walk out if she didn't sell her stake. That they were dropping the suit she'd filed, and they were willing to pay me another lump sum to sign papers agreeing that the fired co-owner was the sole party responsible for all the bullshit thus far, and that the company itself was not. I had my lawyer read them over, and he advised me to sign only if I wasn't planning to sue again, so I signed. I later did work for that same company, and it went completely smoothly, except I found out from one of the engineers that the woman had been writing a blog about how a cabal of devil worshippers had ruined her life due to her strong Christian faith. She'd included a couple of stock images of bikers and goth kids, plus a picture of me taken when I was in Iraq, in a Danzig t-shirt and BDU bottoms, claiming we were the Satanists in question. One of the pictures still had the Jetty Images watermark on it. When I had met her previously, she had long, like butt length, brown hair. But in her profile picture on the blog, she had that distinctly Karen haircut, dyed blonde with auburn highlights, edit, spelling and some minor details for clarity. I work at a grocery store that has a relatively supportive work environment compared to other companies of that nature. There was once a day where a good handful of people around me, myself included, were just really experiencing a tough day. No real rhyme or reason, except that customers seemed to be especially agitated as well, so I chalked it up to just some general mojo in the air. Knowing work was gonna be rough, I was trying to be especially mindful to check myself and just go with it. Lady comes through my line and I ask her to unload her basket, common practice where I'm at, and practically rolls her eyes in the back of her head. When she gets up to me, I try to ignore the obvious ugh vibe she's giving off and do a reset by asking how her day is going. She immediately comes at me with a rant about how everyone in the store seems to be on edge, so I try to empathize with her and tell her I've noticed the same thing, must be something in the air. But she doesn't want anything more than a soapbox. At that time, my coworker in the next lane over is heard telling a customer her honest mood, that she's having a hard time and feeling pretty irritable. She didn't say it in a nasty way, but in an endearingly vulnerable one. My customer hears this and goes, "See, did you hear what she said? Geez, it really makes me not want to shop here." I told her kindly that we all have rough days, and I didn't think my coworker was being rude, but rather conversational about it. She now has another customer to which she is sharing the same information, and my Karen goes, "She did it again. That's not okay. No one wants to hear that. Where is your manager, lady? We are not here to be fucking robots of joy." I used to sell furniture. A Karen came in wanting a dining room table of incredible size. I explained to her that we didn't sell anything that large. She then came up with the idea that she could buy 2 tables and push them together to form a single, giant table. I explained to her that if she did that, the center of the combined table would be virtually unreachable. She wanted to do it anyway. She picked out a table with a stained wooden finish. I explained to her that the wood grain/color on 2 tables may not match each other because of natural variances in wood. She wanted to do it anyway. The tables that she wanted had to be ordered, which was explained to her. When they arrived, our delivery guys took them to her house and set them up. She threw a fit because the grain on the tabletops didn't match. To make her happy, we offered to order a 3rd table and then let her pick the 2 that matched the best. She then threw a fit because she had to wait for another table to be ordered. When the 3rd table arrived, she wasn't happy with it either and convinced our manager to order a 4th table. This led to a fiasco in which our delivery guys had to bring each possible combination of 2 tables in and out of her house so that she could compare them. She finally settled on a pair of tables, which the guys set up. She proceeded to immediately put a huge tablecloth across the tables, completely hiding the all-important tops. About a month later, she came in wanting to return the tables because it was too hard to reach the center of the table. My manager agreed to take the tables back under the condition that she never shop with us again. Fortunately, our POS system had the ability to flag her so that the cashiers/sales people could see that she was banned. About a year later she came in trying to buy some stuff. It was my pleasure to remind her that she was not able to purchase anything from us. I work at a store that does the gym uniforms for the local middle schools. I came back from vacation to pick up a call my second day back. Store name: this is on Edge 123. Where's the local school? About 25 minutes away. Gym uniforms. She was so loud I held the phone away from my ear about 8 inches. Well ma'am, I know we've done them in the past, but I haven't heard anything about them this year. Now, what's your problem? Where are they? I paid a good $25 for them, and so did other people. I'm sorry, that doesn't really answer my question. Do I have the right number? This is Sturgis, right? No, this is store name. My store has a 2-word name, one of which with numbers in it, and it starts with an S. She hangs up. She calls again. Store name: this is on Edge 123. So you're called store name? Yes. Where are my gym uniforms? Ma'am, I told you, I don't have that information available. If you'd like to call in tomorrow morning, you could talk to my boss when they're in. They've left for the day. I want my money back. She hangs up. The next day I was filling orders for that school. Ah, yes, Karen. See, when you take a part-time job that you don't give a fuck about, Karens turn into a source of entertainment. When a fast food joint is staffed by high school kids who literally does not give a fuck, then the gloves are off. We had a Karen who would come through the drive-thru late at night just to find something to complain about so she can get something for free the next day when the day shift is in, and will only hear half the story. So, one magical evening, she comes into the drive-thru, makes her order, pays and collects, comes back 20 minutes later and bitches about something. I really don't remember what, as no one really gave a fuck and let it known. She wanted a full replacement of an order that was completely eaten because she didn't notice something, or it wasn't fully cooked. Something. The drive-thru girl explained to her that we are not going to refund or exchange something that's already been consumed. I want to talk to your manager. Beachfest. The manager was completely out of it from pulling a double and give the sign for someone else to deal with this for her. This is how that conversation went. Karen: I want to speak to your manager. Jay, this is Rick James. Beach. In a Dave Chappelle impression, Karen loses her faking mind. What did you just say to me? Me? He just identified himself as Rick James, then proceeded to call you a beach. I don't understand what the problem nor the confusion is, Karen. Just faking. Explodes in unintelligible words, just unrecognizable words. Actual manager is now just sitting there trying to figure out how to explain this to the general manager. Karen foaming at the mouth, pissed, going on about having us fired or something to that effect. At this point we are trying not to laugh in her face. The next day, so, as the evening crew came marching in at 4 p.m, we all started at the same time. General manager: would you guys like to explain why Karen came in today raving like a faking lunatic because of you guys? Me: well, something tells me you got the gist of the situation. So, there's nothing much to say about it. J. Not to be an asshole, but you're not exactly going to fire us as you don't have the staff to stay open after 6 p.m. General manager: no, I don't, but you guys can't exactly do that. Cheat again. Us: okay, we are sorry, kinda, and that was pretty much the last time we seen that Karen. Not a Karen, but the father of the owner of the business I work at is the worst. I actually feel quite sorry for this man because of his dad, Jack. One day, Jack comes in and says I stopped by after hours and picked up a potted plant I want to pay for. It was $12.50. I ring it up and say, hi, Jack, so nice to see you today. That will be $13.63. No, he yells and glares at me hard. Do you want me to take the sales tax off and put a note in the system that it was for you? Hard angry stare from Jack. Long hard angry stare. Never ending angry stare. I'm honestly just waiting for him to tell me which option he wants. He finally says, "No, I'll pay the tax." I keep my expression pleasant and neutral. He slams $23 on the counter. I look at it and then look up at him with a polite but confused look. "Give me $10 back," he yells, rolling his eyes like I'm stupid. "It's $13.63, I say, keeping the polite tone and facial expression. He fumbles another dollar out and slams it down, then stalks off. Looking at the rest of the showroom, it was near closing, and he was the only customer, and I had other things to do on the yard. So I said, "Jack, it was nice to see you today. I'm going to leave your change and your receipt on the counter right here. Can I help you with anything else? Are you good?" He stalks up to the counter, collects his change and receipt, and without looking at me, says "Beach," and leaves. I didn't tell the owner, or my boss, who is the owner's wife, because they are great to work for, and their dad must be enough of an embarrassment to them already. Many moons ago, in the Best Buy Geek Squad days, a Karen brought in a laptop that she spilled coffee on. Not a little bit of coffee, or a cup of coffee, it was a lot of coffee. Note, she brought the system in 15 minutes before closing. I could tell this thing was toast, so instead of taking it back and charging her for diag, we just ran the onboard diag there at the counter. Within seconds failures started to occur. I told her there's no charge, since we can clearly see it's gone. I advised we can run a proper diag for $59. Then parts along are going to be $200 to $300 and labor another $100. Her best bet may be just to buy a new machine and get a hard drive enclosure to back up any data. She then started getting agitated that she has to spend money. "Y'all aren't going to charge me. Y'all are going to fix this sheet right now." I looked at her, said, "Sure, for $59 diag we can do more tests." She, black female, started accusing me, white male, of being racist and saying she can't afford the diag and or the parts to fix it. That's why I said she should get a new computer. I then said, "No, I'm telling you to save money. A newer machine might be a better option." Then she went off again saying that I'm calling her cheap and broke and can't afford stuff, again accusing me of being a racist. Here's the best part. She ended up leaving and waiting outside the Best Buy for her ride. As I'm walking out, my girlfriend at the time was waiting out front to pick me up, is also black. Guess who Karen is talking to about how shitty Best Buy and Geek Squad is? Yep, you got it. The look on her face when I walked over, gave my girlfriend a kiss, and got in the car was priceless. A formal complaint was filed against me that went nowhere, and the GM pulled me into his office to have a chat, but it was just telling me it's a formality, and offered me a donut. Late to the party, but here goes. Work at a local bottle shop, and I've gone over and started the whole greeting thing asking if I can help, or ECT point, and she agrees she needs some help as she is buying for her son-in-law, when another customer walks past and asks if I could just grab a bottle off the shelf because we was standing in front of it. I happily agree, because it is only going to take a second to grab said bottle and hand it to her. Then this Karen completely loses her shit, complaining that I'm not helping her and more focused on the younger, more attractive customers. I tried to explain that I'm still happy to help her, and this other customer even apologized for interrupting. Go back to the counter to serve this lady, and she instantly asked to see the store manager, and I'd regret not helping her. So manager comes out of his office and asks how he could help and what the problem was. She explains what happened, and the manager said, "I honestly don't see the problem, but we can knock 5% off for the inconvenience." She agrees until after she is about to pay, her card got declined and asked for another 5% off, even though it was her fault. Has she got the PIN number wrong? She turns around and tells the manager that I must have cancelled the transaction, and she wants to write a formal complaint. My manager straight up said no, and that no, he has seen what she is like. She no longer will be receiving a discount. She asks for head office's number because she believes she will get a warning and I'll be fired as an incompetent worker and easily replaceable. 3 days later we get an email from head office saying that they had a phone call from Karen, and from what they gathered she was just someone that loved to complain because she asked them so a 15% discount card for all future purchases, which they declined. Next time she came into the shop, She said she was waiting for her 15% off card and expected to be granted to her. My manager calmly told her never to return to shop, and us losing her custom was going to be beneficial to the company and the workers. Wow, this is the most attention any post or reply of mine has gotten on Reddit. Thank you for your stories, you guys. And thank you to the person who gave me the silver. If I could use that to pay my bills, I'd kiss you. So here's my own Karen story, which kind of inspired my post. I stopped at the grocery store after work one day recently. I pulled into the parking space as I usually do, and the vehicle behind me does the same, pulling into a space in a pretty sloppy, too fast and haphazard manner. I remember thinking, welp, somebody doesn't know how to park. Next thing you know, this lady is coming up and banging on my car window. I lower it a little and she starts scolding me for not looking where I was going and almost causing an accident. I couldn't really engage her because I was wearing a work shirt, and since this is a good job that pays me well, I don't want the company to be associated with the kind of carnage I really wanted to rain down on this Venus beach. What I thought of saying 3 hours later, because that's just how these things go. Did you not see my turn signal indicating that I was going to pull into a parking space? Did you not see my brake lights indicating that I was slowing down? If you didn't, that means you weren't paying attention to the driver in front of you. If you didn't choose to ignore them, that's just as bad. If an accident would have happened, it would not have been my fault. Maybe keep that in mind the next time your shitty driving skills almost cause an accident and you are searching for anyone other than yourself to blame. What? I actually did. Insert Homer Simpson backing into a bush gif. This wasn't me personally, but it was a close friend of mine, so I'm just gonna call her M for this. M, me, and her friends are all into things like anime and crap. So, one time they decided to go out to the mall in full cosplays, basically a costume. They were dressed as villain characters for a show we like. Anyway, they went to the subway station so that they could take the train to the mall. As soon as they got there, they were stopped by an annoying lady getting of the train, telling them that they looked like terrorists and calling over security. So, then they spent about 20 minutes explaining that they were cosplayers simply going to the mall to hang out. After they finally got to the mall, they decided to head to the food court and get some lunch. A Karen decided to stop them and say that she liked their costumes and that her son was a fan of the show. So she brings her son over, and keep in mind Em and her friends are like 16 to 17 and the kid was like 20 to 21, says that they should hang out sometime, and when they rejected her she started to harass them and yell at them. And then, out of the blue, another Karen pulls up with her 11-year-old daughter and does the same thing. So while the two Karens are harassing Em and her friends, the son of the first Karen has to sneak out and go get the cops. They finally escort the Karens and their kids out of the mall, but the saddest part is that the 20 to 21-year-old kid was going to propose to his girlfriend that day, but his mom took him to the mall because he didn't like the girl. And this is why we don't like Karens. Being my mother, my parents are both wine-sipping middle-class thing sucks. There are multiple complaints from neighbors about them, but they were about my mother's daycare ventures. My mother used to tell me stuff like you have no goals. You should told my father stuff like you're angry multiple times, which he would deny, and then finally give in. Yes, he is angry. Both were and are substance abusers. My father would getting into conflicts against neighbors, and my mother said that he would explode at work point, but my parents were different from each other. The way that he was wine-sipping middle-class thing suck was completely different from the way that she was a wine-sipping middle-class thing suck. My father is a wine-sipping green left thing suck, kind of like Generation Kills wine-sipping communist thing suck. He was bad, and she is whack. He once told me he met my mother while still a habitual cocaine user and is observed she is an abuser of her psych meds. His aggressive anger is hasty and sudden. Her aggressive anger is settled and deliberate. He would beat my ass and she would involuntarily commit me, which wouldn't go over very well with him. She traveled a lot outside the city and to go over there in an effort to get her back, which did work several times. I quickly tired of his physical abuse, and as a child, and as an adult, I physically abused him back. This seemed to work at first, until she involuntarily committed me several times. The last straw was when she sprayed mystery fluid inside her lawyer's office. She put the vial in her bag, and she questioned an order for me to give it up. I took the bag by the force of punching. All three of us, we remain unreconciled. No apologies offered, nor accepted point, because I didn't get out of the situation fast enough. I have no physical health, and no money, power, sex, nor fame. You need to take and follow advice. Back in 2018 during the Beast from the East snowstorm in the UK, I took my dogs out to the local dog park. One is a Husky Malamute cross, and the other a purebred Akita. Big, fluffy working dogs bred to handle harsh winters. They love the snow, and went completely batshit crazy the second they got outside. Getting them to the park so they could safely play off lead was a challenge, because they were so excited they couldn't stop bouncing around. We got there eventually though, and surprisingly the park was completely empty. People just didn't want to brave the cold for their dogs, I guess. But hey, that means my boys have it all to themselves anyway. They had been running and rolling around for a few minutes when I heard the telltale call of a Karen. Excuse me. Now, I wasn't on Reddit then, and the Karen meme wasn't as big as it is now, so I had no clue what to expect or what was about to happen. I turned to Karen with a smile on my face, since I was having a good day and watching my dogs play made me happy. Yes? I asked, assuming she wanted to know what breeds my dogs were. I don't mind answering this question, since my crossbreed looks like a husky, but is way too big to be one, so people usually got confused. You need to take your dogs back inside. It's too cold for them out here, Karen said, in the most self-important voice I had ever heard, and I grew up around a narcissist. I just stared at her in shock for a moment. You know one of them is a husky, right? I asked after I regained my composure. What's that got to do with anything? It's snowing. It's far too cold for them, Karen insisted. Huskies were specifically bred to haul heavy sleds in the Arctic Circle. You know, the coldest place on Earth, I said, making sure to stress the important parts. Karen tossed her hair like some kind of teenage schoolgirl and crossed her arms. I don't care. We're not in the Arctic Circle. You're abusing your dogs by making them be out here, she said. Okay, first of all, this is Scotland, so we are in the Arctic Circle. Second of all, are you trying to claim that we are colder than the North Pole right now? Do you even hear what you are saying? I asked, completely flabbergasted. I didn't think it was possible for somebody to be told basic facts and yet deny them like this. Karen began to get agitated. Look, just take your filthy dogs away, or I'll report you to animal welfare, she said snidely, but I have psychology training and picked up on exactly what the problem was. I gave her a slow sadistic smile. Ah, you afraid of dogs, ma'am? Do my big rowdy dogs scare you? I asked in a low, but not threatening voice. Karen looked shocked for a moment, then spluttered. No. I just want to make sure you're not abusing them, she claimed. I raised an eyebrow. So, if I call them over to take them home, you're not going to flinch in fear? I asked. Karen began to look nervous. Oh, you can wait until I've left before doing that, she said. But then how will you know I've done what you asked? I countered sweetly, and Karen's mouth opened and closed for a moment. I smiled wider, then whistled my dogs over. By the time my dogs actually listened and came over, Karen had fled the park entirely. I let them continue to play until I got too cold, then took them home. Another instance happened when I was much younger, about 6. I don't remember it as well as the incident above, but I remember that I had grabbed the last box of some kind of cereal off the shelf at a supermarket. It was about 3 AM and my parents were doing the monthly shop, since one worked super late and the other super early, so this was the only time they could really get groceries. Anyway, I grabbed the box and went back to my mother, who was only about a foot further down the aisle looking at healthier cereals. I don't remember how she got my attention, but a Karen did, and I looked at her, still holding the box. That's my box, she said. I looked at the box in confusion. Why was it on the shelf? I asked. I was leaving it to grab later, but you took it. Give it back, she demanded and reached for the box. I, having a younger sibling who liked to grab things, held the box away from her. Finders keepers. I said, then ran back to my mother. Karen followed, which was a big mistake on her part. My mother was the one who worked late, so she was tired, cranky and very much not in the mood for any body sheet. My mother saw Karen staring at me, following me, and instantly assumed the worst. My mother grabbed me, pushed the cart behind her, and proceeded to scream all kinds of profanities and slurs at Karen. The one I remember the most was "you disgusting pedophile." This got the attention of my father, who was 6'4" and pretty broad-shouldered. He came around with my little brother asleep in another cart and asked me what was going on, since Karen and mother were too focused on each other. That other lady is acting like little brother's name when he has a paddy, I said. Suddenly, there was dead silence behind me, and I turned around to see that not only had the two women stopped arguing, but my mother was laughing right in Karen's face, which had gone as red as a tomato. My father smirked, picked me up, stood at his full height. He had a tendency to slouch, and said, in a condescending voice, "Do you need a nap, miss?" Karen stamped her foot and left. My mother didn't stop chuckling about it until we were loading our shopping into the car to go home.